Hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be creating a look with each of the new palettes from Mcgrath Labs, part of the Bijoux Brilliance collection. Now there are 3 other palettes in this collection, but I did decide to only pick up these 2. These are the ones that spoke to me the most. Now these have a more of a cardboard kind of packaging with a plastic insert and smaller pans. While these still do feel really nice, they feel actually decently heavy. They are not like the really fancy lacquered packaging. These fat pan palettes are $36 each, which I think is pretty affordable for Mcgrath Labs terms, and they do have quite a bit of sales. So let's get right into a look with each of these palettes, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video. I'm going to be using the Mcgrath primer. This is like in a glass tube. This is heavy. Wow, I was not expecting that. This is a clear. It's kind of liquidy. I feel like I need to mix it a little bit. Honestly, a little bit afraid because I just used yesterday their Intensify Eyes wand, and I think mine is expired, but I had a reaction to it. So this one is just going to prime your eyes. It's not going to cover, so you can still see my veins, but I don't think it's going to matter because I'm going to be putting on the eyeshadow anyways. I think I'm going to first dip into the Lunar Nightshade, this is the one I was most excited about. These feel so beautiful. Going in with Midnight Iris. Whoa, pigment. This one reminds me of, do you see how that picks up the Cream to Powder from Natasha Denona and the Future Matte Formula from Charlotte Tilbury in the most recent palette that I just tried? That I have a video up, the Beautyverse palette. This is exactly what that reminds me of, and I love this kind of formula. It just really just blends and blends and blends, and the other best part about it is you don't get any fallout. A little went a very long way. I mean, I'm still kind of blending out here, so you can see just how much that was like one dip. Only non-sparkle shade in this palette. I want to use like all the shades in here, but obviously I know I can't. So I'm actually going to use the super sparkly one to deepen up the outer corner. And I'm going to use, I feel like, because it feels a little bit like powdery. So I'm going to go in with my baby Fairney Pixie Epoxy. I'm just going to put it all over the lid because this is going to be an all shimmer look. I love me an all shimmer look, and I like to tap on it and just make sure I take off any excess and that I spread it around as much as possible. So I picked up Noir Nebula, and this one does have lots of flecks throughout it, which you know how I feel about these kinds of shadows if you've been on my channel. But this one is even more special. It does have a bit more of a sheen to it, so it does seem to be more than just a like matte with sparkles in it. It really has a beautiful sheen. So I'm going to take this blending brush and just kind of blend it in, but definitely would recommend a tacky primer with this one. There's lots of sparkles throughout this one. Next up, I'm picking up Neptunian Orchid, and I'm going to pop that right in the center of my lid. This one seems to be applying very nicely. Super easy. And then in the inner portion, I'm going to go in with the very center shade. And this one is just spectacular. Very smooth and super metallic. So I just use more or less almost all the shades. I'm just going to go back in with a little bit more of that one and bring it up. And I'm going to take Platinum Moonlight as the inner corner highlight. I'm going to bring it underneath my lower lash line just a little bit. Ooh, that is so pretty. Here's the first finished look. Priming again with the Mcgrath eyeshadow primer. It's so interesting because it really feels oily, very like emollient. Definitely put on a little bit too much, but it spreads so easily and very quickly. Going in with the BordeauX Bliss palette. Picked up Mauve Mystique, and this one looks like it has tons of sparkles throughout it, which again, I don't really care for these kinds of shadows, but I feel like they're just gonna kind of blend away anyway, but they actually feel like they're kind of moving around a bit, which I'm actually really surprised about. And then I'm just going in with a little bit more. This is again blending so beautifully, and I would expect nothing less on the Mcgrath eye primer. I would assume that they would formulate it to make sure that it's compatible with their eyeshadows. This one is a little bit of kick up, so it doesn't feel like the other one in the other palette that was kind of like a creamy powder. But look at that, and that had quite a bit of depth. I really enjoy this kind of tone on me. Again, going in with the Finny Pixie Epoxy. Picking up Ruby Noir, which has tons of coppery sparkles in it, so I'm really going to be making sure to pack this down. I would definitely recommend, if you don't want to use a primer, like a glitter primer, with these palettes and you want to use these shades, I would highly recommend doing your eyeshadow before your base, which I usually do that anyway. But when I'm filming, I do reverse it out. So I'm just going to blend that out here and smoke it out. I'm actually going to pick up a tiny bit on the brush too, just to get it up in here and even more blended. I feel like my looks came out really really glam. I just can't help it. I'm going to go back into the other sparkly mauve shade and just bring it out onto the outer portion of that other shade. And that is just blending and blending for days. I'm going to put more Finny Pixie Epoxy on because I do feel like it probably dried out by the time I got to this portion of my lid. So just bringing it back on. And then I'm going in with the shade Cosmic Garnet. And it's going to go right into the center. I feel like I thought this one was going to be more shiny. It's definitely very sparkly, but I think we're just expecting a little bit more. And I'm going to go in with a center shade called Naked Sunset. And this one feels so smooth. Also, like, not that shiny. I think I'm going to go in also with the shade Platinum Rosewater as my inner corner highlight. And then taking Rosewater as my inner corner highlight. This one is really nice kind of sheen. I feel like this would make a great kind of blush topper, actually. It's got a very flattering kind of sheen to it that I can see totally being something that just works really well on the cheek. Here's the second finished look. Overall, I would say this is a great way to try Pat McGrath for $36. These are not the most special textures that Pat McGrath does have to offer. They usually save those for the large mothership palettes. That being said, these are still absolutely beautiful textures to try, especially because they do feel high-end, from the mattes to the varying textures of their shimmers. They do have sales pretty often, so I would recommend at this point just wait for Black Friday, wait for these to go on sale if you wanted to try these out, and just pick one or two that really speak to you. You could probably just do with one. I feel like they do have some kind of similar vibes across. Now, something to note is none of the palettes really had mattes per se. Like, none of them were matte heavy. For the most part, they're all shimmer heavy, which as a shimmer lover, I don't mind at all. I actually would prefer that anyways. So first, I'm going to talk about the Lunar Nightshade palette. This is the one for sure out of the 5. If I just got one, this one I like the most because this one is kind of like the most colorful in terms of just, it has kind of like a plum in it. We might have seen something similar and deeper in one of the Mothership palettes, but overall, I think this one is the most colorful one with that. And then it's like silvery aqua, and then the black, which has just so many beautiful blue silver flecks throughout it. I really enjoy the textures in here, specifically this matte. I really hope to see more mattes like this in future Pat McGrath palettes. I haven't really experienced this kind of matte from them, and I have tried some of their Mothership palettes, so maybe they do not include them in those, but I actually never was really a huge fan of Pat McGrath mattes, but this one is nice. I really like it. I love the tone. I like that it's in here. I think it makes a lot of sense. You can go more glam like I did, or you could just use that one in the crease and then put like this beautiful rose gold super metallic shade on the lid and call it a day. So this is a good kind of overall palette that can give you some lighter looks as well as some darker looks for nighttime. Not the biggest fan of this one, but going into it I knew what I was signing up for. Definitely recommend some sort of a primer, or at least misting your brush with some water after you pick this up, just to try to avoid any fallout, because you will get fallout from this shade. Or do your eyes first. I'm very curious about the eyeshadow primer from Pat McGrath as the base, so I will keep you updated on that. I definitely feel like obviously I have to actually wear test it. I do like this palette and I do want to feature it in a reel, so make sure you follow me on Instagram. Let's talk about the other palette, the Bordeaux Bliss, something like that. And this is just like a everyday, more neutral pinky, again, lots of pinks from Pat McGrath leaning palette. We do have another deeper kind of sparkly shade in here, and I feel like it looks really nice and flattering. The textures in here, again, some beautiful textures for sure. It seems like the first shade in both the palettes is more of like a powdery, drier kind of formula. The sparkle shadow is also a bit more on the traditional kind of drier matte with lots and lots of sparkles throughout it. And then the center shade is just so smooth very metallic, very beautiful, feels very luxurious. And then this shade, which I honestly wish it just didn't have the gold flecks in it. And then this one down here, I would say is kind of like a in between the first shade and the center shade, because it is very beautiful and very metallic, but it does feel a little bit drier. Maybe that's just me. Overall, I would say great way to try some shimmer formulas in a nice small condensed palette and from Pat McGrath. So let me know in the comments below if you picked any of the palettes up and what are your thoughts, which look is your favorite, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.